Bluegrass Jamalong is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas. Hi, this is Matt, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jamalong, the podcast for anyone and everyone who loves bluegrass. Hey everybody, welcome back to Bluegrass Jamalong. This week we are talking about IBMA, and specifically about IBMA's World of Bluegrass, which is moving to Chattanooga this year. It's been based in Raleigh for quite some time, and the whole thing is moving to Chattanooga. And so I thought it would be cool to chat about that, no pun intended, obviously, and just look at how World of Bluegrass started, how it evolved, what it takes to put it on, you know, what makes it such an interesting and unique event, but also like how to manage that change to moving to a new city, why they're moving to a new city, what people can expect when it gets there, because the format will change a bit, the footprint will change a bit. And I'm just really interested by that. It's such an extraordinary event. It's not even an event, it's several events all in one. It's a conference, it's a festival, it's a trade show, it's a bunch of awards ceremonies. It's a social gathering. It's such an interesting thing. And so I reached out to IBMA and we sort of worked out how to do this. And I'm going to give you an episode in two parts. The first part, I'm going to chat to Paul Schiminger. And Paul was the Executive Director of IBMA for 6 years, from 2015 to 2021, and then came back as the Interim Exec Director for a bit in 2023 before Ken White started. And he's going to chat to me about a little bit about how IBMA formed, but mostly about how World of Bluegrass started, the changes it's been through, some of the places it's been, like what is so cool about it as an event, and that side of things. And then I'm going to chat to Jill Snider, who worked for IBMA for 13 years, from 2000 to 2013, on convention services and member services, managed the logistics for World of Bluegrass, and has been doing that for quite some time and is still involved now and has been very, very pivotal in this move to Chattanooga. So she's going to talk to me about kind of how you move an event of this size, what it takes to put on an event of this size, and what people can expect when the event is in Chattanooga, because I know a lot of people are really curious to see what's changing and why and all of that. And it's just such a fascinating thing. I've been to the last couple of World of Bluegrass events in Raleigh. I don't know if we're going to make it out to Chattanooga yet or not this year. I hope so. But just really interesting to talk to them and dig in a bit and find out about what is like a unique event, really, in many, many ways, that is really reflective of the bluegrass world and the bluegrass community. And so I really enjoyed this. And so coming up first, you are going to hear Paul Schiminger. And then after Paul, we will move on to Jill. I really hope you enjoy this. Paul, welcome to Bluegrass Jamalong. It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you, Matt. It's really wonderful to be here. Appreciate you asking.
I'm looking forward to this. I think so many people will know about IBMA's World of Bluegrass and will have been to it, and I'm excited to talk about kind of where it's been and where it's going. But I'd love, before we do that, just to start a little bit by delving into your connection with IBMA and how you got into bluegrass in the first place, even.
Oh my, this could take up the whole podcast, Matt. So I got involved in bluegrass when I was in my teens, and a friend of mine was playing the banjo. I had never been in front of anything bluegrass, and suddenly I was fixated on where he was, and he brought over an album of The World of Flat and Scruggs. It's a compilation album, and the needle hit. And the second version of Foggy Mountain Breakdown is there, and it's this explosion of sound when Earl has the pinch on that initial pinch on the banjo, and I was like, whoa, I need to figure out more of this. And so that led me on my journey. I asked for a banjo for Christmas, and parents were very skeptical of my intentions with it, but I kept with it. And so I that's kind of where the love affair with bluegrass began, was in my teen years. And I played in college in a band while I was there. And once I left college, I did what I guess was the responsible thing. I went into a industry of finance and made a long career of that while playing the music on the side periodically. Got to know a few people in the business. but I was not an insider by any means in the bluegrass world, just sort of around the periphery at some level. And I was starting to get tired of my current career and was looking for a change. One of our kids was out of college. The other was in her senior year. And my wife and I were like, we need to do something different. Well, then the IBMA had in the fall of 2014 had some issues that created an opportunity. There was an opening for the executive director position. Without going into too many details, one thing led to another. Interviewed, came to Nashville, another interview, et cetera, and it happened. So what was to me the coolest part of all of this, Matt, was that it was my professional career and my passion merging into one job, one role, one opportunity that I would never have seen coming ever, and could never have crafted it more perfectly. Not many of us get to do exactly what we love or where our passion lies. And when I was able to do that, I could bring all of my business background into a role that was surrounded by bluegrass, which I loved. And living in Nashville was also great. We enjoyed that change, and obviously with the station in there, that was my home away from home, at least 2 nights a week. And so that's how it all sort of came together, Matt.
I mean, I love that. I think that's one of the things that through conducting these interviews I've been struck by as much as anything else is that combination of sort of passion and career is something that bluegrass is very much about. Like the business, in certain music worlds, the business and the art are very separate things, and one uses the other for very specific reasons. And it just doesn't seem to be the same way. It seems to be the bluegrass world is full of people who are involved in the organising and the running, but also the doing, and the overlap is huge between even the performers and the audience. It's like it's such a collaborative world, isn't it?
It is. In many genres of music, there's a force field between the artists on stage and the audience members, as you're alluding to. Whereas the audience members in bluegrass, many of whom play themselves, they're analyzing what's going on stage at various levels. Some are more dialed into what's going on stage than others, but everybody loves not just the energy and the musicianship, but also trying to observe what's happening because they themselves have an ownership interest in bluegrass. And the artists are largely accessible, which makes for a really cool community experience for everyone. So it is unique. You can't go to Americana Fest. Americana Fest is great. I love them. Their annual event is great, but there isn't a lot of jamming. There isn't a ton of artist and audience interaction, and certainly not in the country music world. You don't see any of that. And so ours it's a unique culture and energy going on, just throughout the community, if you will. And World of Bluegrass sort of plays into that. I know we'll get into that in a little bit, but.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say, because my first experience of World of Bluegrass was 2 years ago, 2023, and I came out and I came and saw like a wonderful keynote speech from Matt Glazer all about the roots of American music, and then I read the bit of paper in my pocket that said, right now over at 7 p.m. at the Lincoln Theatre, special consensus are kicking off the Bluegrass Rumble, so I'll go and watch that then. And I arrive, and as part of that set, you were on stage with them, Ken White was on stage, and I think you were coming to the end of your interim sort of second stint, and Ken was taken over. And I was standing there thinking, the people who are running this world are on stage with the people they're running it for, and what an extraordinarily healthy thing that is, that they are all part of the same thing.
I'm glad you were there. There was a special moment in that I'll call it the handoff with Ken, and Ken is an extraordinary musician, by the way. And it was nice of Greg Cahill to invite me up there with those guys. And it really, I'm glad you took away what I felt also on that stage among friends. I'm here among friends, and obviously highly acclaimed professionals. I'm humbled by the experience, but feeling like I'm totally welcome, totally one of them, even if I'm not at their level. It's just a beautiful thing. It really is.
And I felt that really strongly. I think the sense that if you are coming along, joining in this world with the right spirit, or you're contributing something in some form whatsoever, you are welcome. Yeah. And I felt that really strong, like from the other side of the Atlantic, sort of participating in the way that I have. And it's a beautiful thing to experience. And so for people who haven't been to World of Bluegrass, I think it'd be cool just to give people a slight overview of, because I think sometimes people use the phrase IBMA to describe World of Bluegrass. Say you're going to IBMA this year, and World of Bluegrass is a specific thing. So I think it'd be great for the people who haven't been, for just to talk through what the event is, because it's many events in one, isn't it?
It is. And your comment about going to IBMA versus going to World of Bluegrass is something that we, in the staff, in the boardroom now, I'm serving board member, we talk about all the time. We don't want to correct people by saying, oh, you're not going to IBMA, because that is what people say. And they've been saying it forever, even if the name has been World of Bluegrass forever. And so we embraced it, and we actually changed the branding a few years ago so that it says IBMA on everything we do. So it's IBMA World of Bluegrass, IBMA, business conference, et cetera, so that IBMA is in the name with World of Bluegrass. And it just sort of makes the connection. If you're going to call it IBMA, you're going to call it World of Bluegrass. It's all there in the brand, if you will. World of Bluegrass is not the entirety of what IBMA does, but it does encompass many of the elements that IBMA does throughout the year, and they put it into 1 week. It's an amazing collection of, you said, events, but even within those events, there are activations going on that are pretty fascinating from a business standpoint, from a fan artist standpoint, artist to artist standpoint that goes on. Just to break it down for those who haven't been, the front part of the week is the business conference. That's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and there are speeches. We have a keynote speech. We have general sessions. We have educational sessions going on with panels, et cetera. And many of the professionals that we all know participate in those panels as a way to help others, because certain artists or other industry members have expertise that they can lend to others. So we like to create an environment where we have peer-to-peer education, but also bring in experts from outside where that technical expertise might be needed as well. What happens in the evenings, you referenced the ramble and the showcasing a little while ago. In the evenings, we have what's called our IBMA Bluegrass Ramble, which is a showcasing of both officially selected bands each year. There are panels that select these bands. There are 30 bands that get selected. And then there are unofficial, where there are sponsored showcases where a label or a management or artist team might put together their own showcase with bands that they're affiliated with or connected to, et cetera. Or some they just want to do it with friends. And some of those even happen in the suites in the hotel, and they're the real, I'll call it personal, type showcase rooms that are just wonderful as well. So that's happening on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday evening. It also happens, but mostly for local bands, because on Thursday evening, we have our Bluegrass Music Award Show. Now, what's also happened on Wednesday and Thursday is Wednesday during the luncheon, we have our Momentum Awards luncheon, where we recognize artists or industry people or mentors of those people who are now just hitting their stride, and they are the rising stars, and you're seeing that momentum begin to carry them. On Thursday during lunch, it's our industry awards. Just like our music awards are for artists and music, the industry awards are for others within the industry who are very important to making it happen, whether it's broadcasters, event producers, songwriters, etc. And so we honor them along with our Distinguished Achievement Award recipients, which is a really special part of the week to recognize 5 people or organizations in that manner. So then it takes us back to the Thursday night, which is the award show. It's where we call it the biggest night in bluegrass, because people in bluegrass like to get dressed up, like to know. We're all proud of the music. We know how good it is and how good the artists and even the people in the industry are. It often doesn't feel like it gets the spotlight because of the other genres that are much more commercially available. So this is a night where we go into a great auditorium. People get dressed up. It's a highly produced event, so you get to hear the best live music, best bands. But there are also the award presentations for the year. Our Hall of Fame inductees get honored there each year, and so it's a special evening for sure. So that's everything I've just said is just the first 3 days. Oh, also there's an exhibit hall that is available so that people can go, whether it's a business to business or consumer to business. Instruments, accessories, instructional materials, whatever you can think of. So now Friday and Saturday is the festival. And it's a multi-stage festival, and we can get into changes that are happening this year versus others. And I know you'll be talking to Jill Snider, who can give you a great picture of what's happening in Chattanooga this year. But what we try to do with the festival is there's a couple things. One, we are trying to raise money for the IBMA and the IBMA Trust Fund, which is a resource for those experiencing financial emergencies. And also, we are trying to put as much music into audience ears as possible. We feel we owe a platform to our industry to have a celebration on a weekend where we can stretch the limits a little bit, mix and match different types of bands, et cetera, put on this festival and attract a lot of people to hear bluegrass, which further helps our community in what the IBMA does overall as an association. So we do all of that. And that, if you think about all those things, about education, about showcasing of bands, bringing bands in front of talent buyers and festival producers, it's about recognizing various professionals with awards, having festival stages to put music into ears. All of that is part of the business of the association to help grow the music, help the professionals through education and connection and empowerment around the world. So we can do that in other ways, and we have other programs, et cetera, but that week sort of brings so much of it into laser focus, if you will, into those 5 days. So I know I've said a lot, but hopefully that frames it out for you there, Matt.
Well, there's a lot to say. It's a huge, multifaceted thing, isn't it? And it's the World of Bluegrass is the ideal name for it. And I came the first year, and I had to leave after a couple of days because I had to go home for a friend's wedding. So I think I was around until sort of early Thursday evening, just as things were starting to really kick off. And then this last year, I was there for the weekend festival as well. And it was amazing. You get these kind of the ticketed events at Red Hat Amphitheatre with the big names, and that was astonishing. But also just walking around the streets and seeing this free festival that local people can come and see it and contribute and take part. And it was an extraordinary thing to see. And just hearing you then mentioning the trust fund, it was a particularly poignant weekend because it was just as the hurricane was about to come through or not. And thankfully it missed us in Raleigh. But as the event was happening, bands were trying to get in, trying to get out. The chaos was being wreaked upon many, many people who the trust fund then went on to help. So it's, the whole sort of world does come together around all sorts of things. And it was
well said.
And
well said.
And World of Bluegrass has been part of the IBMA. I think the first one was in 1987, and IBMA formed in 85. So it's 40 years this year, which is one of the things that we're obviously celebrating this year. And World of Bluegrass has played a big part in that from the start, and it's moved around a bit, hasn't it? And I'm keen to sort of,
it has,
whether that was logistical reasons or just keen to sort of get more communities involved, really.
Right. Well, I would say I could claim it was a master plan to plan out the moves, but it really became one of necessity and opportunity along the way. The IBMA its first offices were in Owensboro, Kentucky, and that's where the first World of Bluegrass was held. And it was a place called the Executive Inn, and there was another festival stage not far from there, etc. Well, the Executive Inn was getting torn down, and we had also become pretty big. And the Executive Inn, while everybody thinks about it fondly, remembers it fondly, it was a bit tired. Let's just say it that way. And so it no longer exists. So that's when IBMA moved World of Bluegrass from Owensboro to Louisville. And it was there. I think it was in Owensboro, and I can't remember all the number of years for each location, but I think Owensboro was 11 years. Then it went to Louisville for several years at the Galt House, very popular. Then moved on to Nashville. So the IBMA's offices had moved then to Nashville. World of Bluegrass moved to Nashville in hopes that now we could bring all the industry people there who may or may not be able to travel every day to get to it, and try to and use the Ryman Auditorium for the award show, et cetera. So, it in the beginning it was great. It then waned significantly in the later years, and what we found, quite frankly, is a lot of the industry professionals would not stay at the conference or stay, and hang around because they can go home and go to bed. Mm. Whereas when you're in a remote location, they're going to stay overnight, and it's much more interactive when it's a bit more remote from where everybody's sleeping, their homes. So anyway, it was in Nashville then for several years, and in each of those locations, it was pretty much a self-contained. Owensboro had an outdoor stage as well as the Executive Inn. Louisville was all within the Galt House. Nashville was all within the old convention center that no longer exists today. And Raleigh had a notion that Raleigh, North Carolina, had a notion that, hey, why don't we rethink this whole notion of World of Bluegrass and put it out on the streets? Let's make it a bigger celebration. Take some elements that work well, obviously using a business conference within convention center makes perfect sense. So let's do that. We created the Ramble when we went to Raleigh, and it was interesting. We had our showcase bands that were playing within the convention center in Nashville. But what was also happening at the same time is we had agents, labels, getting places off campus where they were inviting audiences to come in and listen to their artists away from the everything else. And it was drawing people in a fragmented way that was not really IBMA centric. So IBMA said, well, if that's what people want, let's give them what they want. Let's create something that we can organize with official showcase bands, put more bands in front of communities, et cetera. And that's how the Ramble showcases in venues around the downtown area. That's how that began. And then created the multi-stage festival, as you described a little while ago in Raleigh. So that was a big change for our organization. And it also created a great deal it put a lot of financial burden on us to make sure that it worked, because it was a huge production now. We were partnering with the city. They took on some of the responsibilities from a budgeting standpoint, but we took on a lot. And that we were in Raleigh for 12 years, and it changed everything, and it for the better. It elevated our World of Bluegrass in many ways. Without getting into too many details, change was needed after we knew a change was going to be needed after 2024. And it's also healthy for our association to periodically move. A, you bring a new sense of energy in a new location. B, you leave behind some bluegrass infrastructure, if you will, where they can now hold other events, festivals, just like Raleigh's going to hold a music festival there that's going to incorporate bluegrass. Well, that's largely born out of what we created together. That's a good thing for our bluegrass community. So now we're going to go to Chattanooga and we're going to modify the structure again a bit. And Jill can get into more of that, but it's going to be a little different than what it was in Raleigh. Still utilizing the strengths of what we've learned in Raleigh, but also creating a model that is, we'll call it a little healthier for the IBMA as well financially.
And how do you go about picking a location? Does it come down to kind of, obviously, everywhere's got a convention center, everywhere's going to have a theater. There's a lot of kind of scope within the bluegrass heartlands for different cities you could go to. I would imagine a lot of it comes down to the people you're dealing with in setting up that relationship. We'll be right back with you just after this. The long-awaited Hill Country series from Collings Guitars represents a new voice in their acoustic lineup. Rooted deep in the bluegrass world, these new Dreadnought and OM models feature a strong fundamental tone with a dry, warm and woody character that's sure to catch the attention of players who hold the vintage instruments of the 30s in their highest regard. Watch world-class pickers Jake Workman, Kenny Smith and Bob Minner perform with new Hill Country instruments on the Collings Guitars YouTube channel, and learn more at collingsguitars.com.
Well, Matt, it's a three-dimensional puzzle for sure. We created a task force to look at various cities and venues, and we did a lot of traveling. We talked to 30 different cities to start off, and did some research and got it down to about 6, and then started doing our site visits. And there are some elements that are important when you do this. One, you want the city to be big enough that it has an infrastructure that can handle what we're trying to accomplish. But you also don't want it to be so large that you're lost, that you're just a customer. And frankly, in Nashville, we became a customer, not a partner per se. And whereas in Raleigh, we were partners. And in Chattanooga, we were partners. We're important to them and they are important to us. And you talked about the people, getting a sense of how committed they are to being those partners, to understand what's important about the event for our participants, for the IBMA, and for us to understand what's important to that city, because we need to make sure they accomplish their goals as well. The facilities become then the most difficult part of it all. Raleigh, it has the perfect campus for what we were doing. Ramble venues maybe not perfect, but everything else from a convention center, award show venue, festival layout is great. Tough to replicate that. Chattanooga is not exactly the same as Raleigh, so people are going to have to go in with a big open mindset of this is going to be different. It's not going to be exactly like Raleigh, but Chattanooga has some really cool aspects about it that are going to make it fun in a different way. And just as people complained, some people complained when we left Nashville, not everybody. A lot of the local Nashville musicians and industry people really complained. After a year or two of Raleigh, they went, this is the best it's ever been. It took a while for them to recalibrate, their minds on this. And I have a feeling it's going to be the same here with Chattanooga. So it took multiple visits, a lot of analysis, a lot of negotiation, figuring out how we could make sure our participants can, and whether they be professional or fans, how we're going to create this layout, this campus that's going to, help make World of Bluegrass great in Chattanooga. So ultimately, we came down to a couple of different cities, and Chattanooga really showed that they wanted it for sure.
And it's exciting because I'm not a World of Bluegrass veteran by any sense, but just coming down the last couple of years, you get the really strong feeling that it is a touch point for people through the year, and people look forward to seeing each other at World of Bluegrass, and some of the volunteers that are there, and also through the podcast, talking to musicians. So many stories come out about the band got together because they used to keep bumping into each other at World of Bluegrass, or Sarah Jarosz talking about first seeing a octave mandolin and the trade show, and all these things of just little memories of things that have come out of it. And so I guess one of the biggest assets something like World of Bluegrass has is its people, and they go where it goes. And so there's that as well, I guess.
Well said. Well said. During the course of a year, just think about the artists. They're coming and going everywhere. Some run into each other in Nashville because many live there, but not everybody does. And if you're a touring musician, you're scattered. You're on the road, and you may be at a festival with your friends, but you're not there all the time. You cross paths. Okay, we're playing at 7 and they're playing at 8. We maybe get a half an hour to hang out with them, that sort of thing. Whereas at World of Bluegrass, it is a gathering place for everybody to just come together, get caught up. They do a lot of jamming, a lot of storytelling, that sort of thing. So it has become an important point for that gathering place, that hub, if you will, each year for sure. And your point, Matt, was perfect about how it's also sparked other things along the way. The infamous String Dusters will tell you, and they're performing this year, they will tell you they formed at World of Bluegrass. They sort of knew each other, but they hadn't really entertained getting together and doing anything. And they started jamming, and they like, hey, this kind of works. And so that's where they came together. You can listen to Sierra Hull or Michael Cleveland. You talk about going through the kids programs that we have, and that's where they all got to know each other. And there's an amazing video out there of the kids all-star band. I forget, Pete Wernick had put them together. I can't remember what year it was, but it was Chris Thiele, it was Mike Cleveland, Josh Williams.
Cody Kilby, I think, was in there as well.
Cody Kilby was in there too. It was ridiculous how talented these kids, better than most adults already, but they were going nuts, and it was great. So that helped them build their community as well. So it wasn't just in their specific community where they live. Now it got them in front of so many others that were also great musicians, that they could feed off of each other, learn off of each other, become great friends for life. And many of whom have been in bands together since then. I mean, and Sierra Hull is great friends with Chris Thiele. She obviously was too young back then but she's gotten to know Chris, and they're amazing friends to this day because of what happens at World of Bluegrass, or IBMA, as some people say.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I remember seeing that clip on Ruth Oxenberg and Rob Schumer's beautiful Bluegrass Journey film, half of which sort of centers around Grey Fox and half of which centers around IBMA. I think it was when World of Bluegrass was in Nashville, and just seeing, and the sense of people coming together and seeing each other as friends, and everything just being one big melting pot of, and I was, not part of this world at all at that point, but it's just, you think, oh, I want to be part of that. That looks fun, and I had a great experience coming, even for half of it for 1 year. And then I was in an elevator in the hotel on my second night there last year. And I get in, and the guy he said, oh, which floor do you want? I goes, 12, please. And he went, I know you. Do you do a podcast? I recognise your voice. And I got chatting to him. It's John Huber, who runs the Chicago Old Town School of Folk. And we ended up having a long conversation, and just the people you bump into and the things that happen. And then, second year I went back, I met people again. And it's an extraordinary place to come to feel like a part of something.
Yeah. First time I talked to Tony Rice was on an elevator. back, I don't know when it was. I can't remember which location, but it was in an elevator. And that was the first time I ever had a conversation with him, and just easy peasy, it's just like that. And, that's just a memory everybody has those stories, those memories like that. And I'm glad you got to experience it firsthand, just to make a connection that was unexpected, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to hear from Jill about kind of what people can expect, what's going to be the same, what's going to change, because change is a funny old thing, isn't it? It's, we resist it because we like to know where we are, and yet with everything in life, all the best stuff that happens to you comes from just stretching slightly outside your comfort zone. That's the way life works, isn't it? So I'm excited to hear what's next.
Oh, totally agree. Yeah, I've tried to be very careful not to reveal anything that Jill is going to talk about, because she gets, I can give you a fair amount, but she can take that and give you a whole lot more, because she's so embedded in the production of World of Bluegrass. This year should be terrific.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, I've enjoyed it too. Thank you, Matt.
So that was Paul Schiminger, former Executive Director of IBMA, chatting about World of Bluegrass's history and some of what goes into it. The next conversation is with Jill Snider, chatting all about the move to Chattanooga, what people can expect, and sort of how all of that pans out. I hope you enjoy this. Jill, welcome to Bluegrass Jam-Along. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And it's a really interesting conversation to have. I've chatted to Paul Schiminger already about kind of the bit of the history of World of Bluegrass, but it's an exciting year for IBMA, not only because it's the 40th anniversary, because World of Bluegrass moves to a new city. But before we dive into that, I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of how you first got into bluegrass, because everybody who is involved with bluegrass that I've spoken to in any way comes to it through a love of the music in some form.
Yeah, for sure. Same for me. My dad was a Doc Watson fan, and he started taking his family to bluegrass events probably when I was about 5 or so. And it started with Doc Watson shows, and then, bluegrass, any kind of underground thing, right? When you go to one, you find out about 5 more, and then you go to those 5 and you find out about 10 more, and, that kind of thing. So, by the time I was 6 or so, we were, we had the camper, and it was a family thing. We went to bluegrass festivals every weekend during summer. And, that was our thing. It was a family of 5. I have 2 older sisters. I grew up in it, and it's just been my community for a long time. In the early days, kids, you get out of the truck and you go play, go find kids your age and go play. And I wasn't that into music. And probably about 6 or 7 years old, somewhere around there, you had to go check in every couple hours. Right. And it was a pretty safe environment, but go check in with the parents and what you're doing. And, Doyle Lawson and Quicksilver was on stage. When I went to check in, and I ended up sitting there for a few minutes, and I was like, wow, this is really great, And from there, I think that really started my love of the music. And I started saving my money to buy every Doyle Lawson record, and, had my autograph book that I collected bluegrass royalty autographs in, and all those things. So that led me on to play music later on in my teen years, early 20s. And then I was actually on staff with the IBMA from about 2000 to 2013 or so. So that was when Dan Hayes was executive director. And so the events at that time were in Louisville, Kentucky, and then they moved to Nashville. And then the year I left my staff position was the year the events transitioned to Raleigh. So from there, I, helped out where I could. I was involved with the award show in different ways, just hands-on, call me if you need something. but I was working back in corporate America and not part of the bluegrass industry really. I worked at the station inn for a very long time, so that kept my toes in the bluegrass and music communities in Nashville. But so yeah, then the last couple of years I have produced the awards show in Raleigh, and then this year saw the need for or saw the opportunity, I guess I should say, saw the opportunity to help them move their events to a new location, which I have done before in my staff role, and I know how taxing that can be. So I just raised my hand to help out, and Ken said, yeah, let's do it. So I'm helping this year move the festival and create a venue in downtown Chattanooga to host our festival event. And I am still producing the award show as well. So yeah, lots to do between now and September.
And it's a really interesting thing because having been out at World of Bluegrass for the last couple of years in Raleigh, and you wander around over the course of the week, you realize what a monumental undertaking it is, how many moving parts there are to do that. And then you add in the element of lots of it being outdoors. Right. So even just to move that to a new city is a huge thing. But it sounds like there's also some new things going on this time as well. You've adapted it to a new environment, taken the opportunity to freshen things up a bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can't build in a new place and it look exactly the same. The footprint is a little different, and all those things. Also, the events in Raleigh, when the events moved to Raleigh, they changed drastically then. Prior to Raleigh, in the very early days in Owensboro, Kentucky, the festival was outside on the river at English Park. But then when the event moved to Louisville and then to Nashville, everything was centered indoors, typically in the Prime Hotel or the convention center that we were hosted in. So the festival, everything was indoors, and it was, very compact and, very specific. When the event moved to Raleigh, it was really the city of Raleigh that had the vision for the street fest and, all that it became. First year in Raleigh, have you only been to Raleigh the past couple of years?
Yeah, just the last 2 years.
Yeah. So first year in Raleigh didn't look like year 13 in Raleigh, right? But it has, evolved over time. But certainly the component of what was happening in the street versus then what was happening in the ticketed area or the Red Hat Amphitheater, it's never looked like that. World of Bluegrass events and the festival that IBMA has hosted for the last 30 plus years never looked like that until we moved to Raleigh. And it was really the city and their local organizing folks that helped get it there. And it was fantastic. I mean, the energy that came from that street fest was phenomenal, and we hope to recreate and maintain and keep some of that in Chattanooga, but certainly from an economic standpoint, and the fact that the festival goes to help the Bluegrass Trust Fund, right? You want the economics to be there, and it has to shift a little bit. So where in Raleigh, the primary, I guess you could probably say most of the talent that you could go and see was free. And then it was just the Red Hat Amphitheater that was the paid kind of component of the festival, at least. That's going to shift a little bit. So now we have 3 stages of music within the paid or ticketed portion of the festival. So now that's the primary kind of where you will find music for the festival part. Now the convention and the conference and the ramble, those are all pretty much the same as far as how they're structured. But for the festival, you'll see that in, the 3 stages of music in the ticketed part. We do still have a free component that will have music, a couple stages right now in year 1, plus arts and crafts vendors, food vendors, other engagements and things from the local community. So definitely still that component. And this is year 1, right? And so we expect to keep expanding that. We can't expect year 1 in Chattanooga to look like last year in Raleigh. Because the difference also in this new footprint is that, Raleigh had the Redhead Amphitheater. It was already its own venue. And we have to build that venue out a little bit in Chattanooga. So they have fantastic space. And I think folks are going to love it once they get here. But, it's hard to picture in your mind what that will look like until you see it. And, you've got to put up fences and bathrooms and, bring in the infrastructure to build that and make it accessible and comfortable for folks. So that's what we're working on.
Yeah, it is really interesting. There's something like from a fan point of view, there's something wonderful about a festival that takes place around lots of venues in a city rather than just somewhere in the middle of nowhere where you are kind of camping. And those are great too, but there's something fascinating about wandering around a city as part of a festival, and the footprint of that city and how that all kind of fits together is going to make such a difference to the experience, I guess, just physically where everything is.
Yeah. And I think, I've seen this event move a few times, and year one is always the learning year, right? Not only for the staff and the folks that are putting on the event, but for the attendees, because like you said, it's not, I've entered the campground or I've entered the festival grounds and that's, I'm here. And I've set up my camper or whatever it is. I've got, this is where I'm staying, and I've got to find these restaurants and I've got to find these other venues, and they're staying for, 7 to 10 days, some of them. Right. And so that's a long time to check everything out and understand how far it is from point A to point B. And there's a lot of anxiety around that for some of our attendees, right? How far is the walk? How do I get from one place to the other? Because I'm going from my hotel to the convention center, and I'm going from the convention center to these ramble venues. And how far is that? And then the award show on Thursday night, I've got to get to the award show on Thursday night. How do I get there? Right? Am I going to need an Uber? Can I walk it? Can I, what if it's raining? There's all these questions about all of that. And then, how far is the festival from my hotel? So we can explain that and give Google Maps and, try to, help folks as much as we can, provide transportation options and all those things, which we will. But it's sometimes you have to experience it in year one to, to really get a feel for it.
I was looking the other day, and it feels like, just from kind of doing a search, it feels like there are a lot of hotels pretty central near like the convention center and the sites, and it feels like there's a lot of options for people to stay in terms of things like that.
For sure. There's, I think, just a couple of those hotels are our primary hotels for this year. The Marriott, of course, which is attached to the convention center, a hotel called the Chattanooga, which is also in close proximity. And then a couple others that are around there just a block away or less, the Reed House, Hotel Beau. There's lots of other options, definitely within short walking distances. You probably have seen, right? There's typically one hotel that really becomes a primary hotel from a jamming perspective. Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of majority of showcases and, all those independent things, grassroots things that take place. So I'm sure that will be the Marriott. It's also a learning curve for those host properties, right? Because we create a lot of noise. Banjos are loud, and a lot of flyers, and people milling about. The restaurants and bars will be busy. So they have to figure out staffing and what that looks like for their property and all those things. So there's some of that learning to happen this year as well. And I think even from a hotel perspective and participating venues and all of those things, right, where we have our ramble situated this year, that may not look the same by 2026, right? Some of those venues may go, or it'll expand, or it'll change. But I think over our relationship with Chattanooga, which right now is 3 years, year one, we're going to learn a lot. Year two, you're going to see some changes, and you'll continue to see that as the event evolves and the city understands it better as well. So
it's funny what you'd say about the hotels, and if you witness 52 different conventions coming over the course of a year, you're probably not going to see anything else quite like World of Bluegrass.
No, I mean, accountants do not behave like a bunch of bluegrass pickers. So it is a different event. It is a different animal for sure.
And just, I remember sitting around, I think on the Sunday morning, went to go back out to the airport last year, and watching the next conference sort of gradually drift in. And I can't remember if they were dentists or what they were, but just the vibe was totally different. And you knew they'd all be up early and in bed early, and like totally the opposite of everybody up all night and then sort of dragging themselves out of bed at about 10 or 11 to go and start again. And
yeah, I always feel bad for those folks. I mean, when we come in, or, you know, you can tell the people that are walking around going, I don't know what's happening. And you're like, did they not tell you? Did anyone from the hotel or the convention center or wherever, you know, they kind of got sandwiched in on us? Did anybody tell you this was going on? I always ask. And sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no, but it is funny. Or weddings. I think it's funny when weddings end up being booked in our hotels. You know, it's an interesting thing. So,
and are there any particular challenges of moving an event of this scale? Like, obviously everything is a challenge in some form. Are there things that are difficult to navigate that surprise you?
I don't know that it's things that surprise me. I think really it's building relationships, you know, because you have to build relationships, especially for this festival, right? And we're building a venue in a downtown footprint that is different than what Chattanooga has executed before. So while Miller Park, Miller Plaza, Patton Square, they've been used for events since they were built many years ago, but they have not been used for a ticketed event. So us putting fencing around a perimeter of downtown Chattanooga has come with some head scratching, you know, and a lot of Chattanooga events, music events, take place on the river, and that's not going to be our footprint for 2025. What year is it? It's 2025. It might be our footprint for 2026. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. But for 2025, we are in downtown. So it's in early meetings with emergency services, and these are the, you know, folks that protect Chattanooga. They kind of would look at us and listen to the pitch and then go, why aren't we doing this on the river? We know how to secure the river. You know, they've done that 1,000 times over for all kinds of events. So yeah, we're IBMA, what we're executing here. And of course the city wants us in downtown, right? They want to see the space activated in that way. And they want to attract other organizations and companies to come do things in downtown Chattanooga as well, as every city does, right? They want to engage their downtown footprints. So we're a little bit of the guinea pig in that too. And so while we will learn a lot, the city will also learn a lot in how this gets executed.
I guess that's it, isn't it? They're used to putting on like events on the river, but actually World of Bluegrass is not an event. It's about 4 events at the same time, isn't it? You've got a trade show and a conference and a festival and awards ceremonies, and, you know, there's right. Sort of lots of things going on and overlapping, and they all have slightly different requirements.
It's always an education topic, right? Just the World of Bluegrass moniker in and of itself. What does that mean? And, you know, within the World of Bluegrass really means everything. And then it's the conference, and then it's the award show, and then it's the festival. And, you know, so yeah, it's a lot for somebody to take in and understand.
And will the kind of shape of World of Bluegrass feel pretty similar in terms of starting off with conference and the, like, you know, the sort of Momentum Awards, the industry awards, and the big music awards, followed by is it the same sort of shape people are used to?
It is. I think the structure of everything is pretty much the same. So, you know, they can expect from an agenda perspective, everything to fall within the same kind of time frame and days that they have traditionally seen.
And it's an interesting idea, because just having experienced the Red Hat Amphitheatre and the Street Festival, there's something about the Red Hat being slightly separate from the rest of it that means people come and go, and, you know, it's never as full as you think it's going to be sometimes. But I guess if you've got 2 or 3 stages all within the ticketed bit, maybe the flow will be slightly easier for people there.
Yeah, we hope so. And we expect people to come in and out as well. I mean, not only will there be an outdoor street component that is not ticketed, we will also have engagements in the convention center. So the exhibit hall will still be going on, likely the international stage, the workshop stage, those will be centered in the convention center. So we want to create a corridor for sure, and, drive people back to the convention center, and back to the festival, right? So we do hope to create, again, familiarity with the footprint, right? And understanding the proximity of these venues, because we're creating a venue in downtown, and how easy it is for folks to kind of take in the whole experience. So it's not just, I've got my ticket, I'm going to park myself at one stage. We want you to experience everything. So there is, there'll be lots of things going on at the same time, as you run into the evening, I think around 9:00, right? 9 p.m. is kind of where everything will center then back to the main stage and the headliner, which is kind of what how the agenda went in Raleigh as well. So that will feel the same. And that's really from a capacity standpoint, where you're looking at, okay, how many tickets can we sell? And what is this, if everyone does end up in this one space, by 9 p.m., what does that look like? And so that's always what you're tracking to as far as capacity and trying to, project how people will move and use the space. So,
well, it's an interesting event for that, isn't it? Because much like a bluegrass festival, lots of people go not to watch the main bands, but to meet
right.
people and to jam and to do all the periphery stuff which is not typically how a music festival or this kind of festival works. People go to, it's a much
right.
less community thing. People go and they stand in a field and they watch some bands and they go home happy. But this is
right.
as much about people seeing each other interacting as it is about, it's a much more two-way thing, isn't it?
It is. I mean, if I'm buying a ticket only to, a show at an amphitheater, they know what that is, and they pretty much expect, the majority of people with the ticket to show up and be there for it, and so from a food and beverage standpoint, you can predict that. From a traffic flow standpoint, you can predict that. From a security needs standpoint, you can predict that, right? Whereas here, we know people, not everybody's in the same place at the same time. And so they're going to flow through the space and in and out of the space differently. And with so many other venues, while we say the festival is downtown, you still have the hotels, you still have bars and clubs who are going to be doing things and promoting things that are, whether they're official events of IBMA or non-official events of IBMA, there's still a lot going on that people will be, participating in. So.
And is there anything that the sort of footprint this time allows you to do that you weren't able to do before? Has it sort of provided new opportunities for anything?
Not that I can think of. I think some of that will be different in year 2. Again, the exhibit hall is a prime example. The space in Raleigh, the distance between the Red Hat Amphitheater and where the exhibit hall was situated in the convention center was pretty close proximity. It was really across the street and through the double doors, right? That is probably one of the bigger challenges with the footprint in Chattanooga. It's a little bit further apart. And so we did survey, and we've, asked some of our luthiers and merchandisers that are in the exhibit hall traditionally and said, hey, do you want to come outside for the festival, right? We know it's an additional lift to be set up in the convention center for the week during the conference, and then you have to tear down and you move outside, and then it's a question of weather and security and all these things. But that it is important to us to create that engagement back to the exhibit hall, because the exhibit hall is an important component. But again, it's training the attendees, it's reminding them multiple times all the time, right, that component is there, and finding ways to draw them into it. So that's, call it a challenge, call it an opportunity. It's both in many ways. But I think that's one of the bigger things that we're paying attention to for this year 1. Now, in year 2, how well do we do that in year 1? And then in year 2, do some of those exhibitors and luthiers, right? Have they seen the space? Do they understand it more? Did they have a good experience? Did they not have a good experience, right? And how can we make changes to improve that? If it is moving outside, if it is making other changes, then we'll have to figure some of that stuff out.
Yeah, and about, as you say, like framing it as an opportunity, you talk about how much the event changed when it moved to Raleigh and how, much it grew in that time. And, it's exciting to see what those opportunities will be. And is there, and it may be too soon to say any specifics, but is there anything special planned for the 40th anniversary of IBMA this year?
Not that I'm aware of. Now, it is the 40th anniversary of the organization, but the events are different ages depending on the event. And I'm not the expert on that. I'm sure that the office knows, but I think this year the award show is just like the 36th annual or 37th. I'm not sure. So there's different anniversaries for all that. The organization is celebrating 40 years, and I think they have some content they're planning to do and record with, some early contributors and founding members and that kind of stuff. But I'm not in tune with how that's going. Well,
it's nice to have those staggered start dates because it means there's lots of years you can celebrate over, lots of different anniversaries to celebrate.
Exactly.
Well, it's exciting times. I think it's going to be I really hope I'm going to be able to go out and see it in Chattanooga this year. But it sounds like it's going to be a really interesting experience for people and an opportunity to refresh things and change things up a bit and just kind of, keep this event growing and changing.
Yeah. And change is always, hard. But it's been exciting every time this event has moved. And I think Chattanooga will be the same. Chattanooga's been a very warm welcome to us, and the bluegrass community here, the bluegrass scene in this region of Tennessee is, bigger than I've ever seen. People think about Nashville and the Nashville music community. And while it was great in Nashville, the events were great in Nashville, we were a very small fish in a big pond, right? That changed with Raleigh, and part of that was how Raleigh embraced the event. So it's a different learning thing, but we've gotten a warm welcome from everybody, from the city, from the county, from, all the local partners that we've engaged with. And so they're learning us, we're learning them. And I think when we come out of 2025, we're going to have a lot of ideas and a lot of ways to keep improving the event and building it over the 3 years that we have contracted, of course, but then, for future years as well. This event has never just stayed in the city for 3 years. So I think our stay in Chattanooga is definitely going to be longer, and we'll have lots of opportunity to keep improving it. So,
well, I imagine you have a very busy 3 months ahead of you. So best of luck with all that. And thanks.
Well,
thanks for taking the time to come and talk to me. It's been a real treat.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me.
Bluegrass Jamalong is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas.